Good evening. This is Live at 525, and it's Save Open Space Burlington, bringing to you today two recent returnees from Barcelona. My name is Andy Simon. I'm here with Genese Grill and Ibnar Avilix Stratibus, and they just came back from the Fearless Cities Conference in Barcelona, Spain, Catalunya.
We should have taken him with us.
And I'm eager to hear about it, and I'm sure that you are too. So what is a fearless city?
Oh dear.
And do we live in one?
How do we talk about it? I think we talked about how, well, in Italy, I guess maybe to sidestep a little bit, there was, I know, but in Italy they're talking about rebel cities. And I feel like I'm reading a little bit of a switch to fearless cities like a year later as a way to be, to me, like a little more maybe all-inclusive kind of terminology.
Yeah, I personally had a little trouble with the title of the conference because there are indeed a lot of things to be frightened of, and that came up in the conference. But the idea is that despite all those things that we are afraid of, we are going to stick to our values, and we're going to keep fighting for what we believe in. And I think, we were going to have a picture of the mayor of Barcelona and our own B. Bookchin up on the screen, but the technology isn't working.
Right.
But we can imagine that picture.
So who is the mayor of Barcelona and who is B. Bookchin? You can tell us that.
So the beautiful thing, the epic thing about this conference is that, Ibnar and I and our other friend got to go to Barcelona with B. Bookchin and Debbie Bookchin. Debbie Bookchin is the daughter of Murray Bookchin, and B. Bookchin is the former wife of Murray Bookchin, the founder of social ecology, the founder of libertarian municipalism. And we were going to Barcelona because in Barcelona they had this conference hosted by this group of people called Barcelona en Comú, which is in common in Catalan. And they were holding this conference because they, in fact, took over their city in 2015 through a municipalist platform that had a lot to do with Murray Bookchin, our own Vermont Murray Bookchin's theories about municipalism. And it was, as Debbie pointed out, she gave one of the speeches during the conference, that it was the 30-year anniversary of when her mother, B. Bookchin, ran for alderman, which is now city council in the city of Burlington, on a municipalist platform. So I just want to say, what is libertarian municipalism, and what is this thing, this amazing thing that the Barcelona en Comú people have done? It is a platform, a way of thinking about politics that is sort of a third way, as Debbie described it, between anarchism and communism, which prioritizes democratic participation in assembly style. And Murray and B moved to Burlington, to Vermont, because of the town meetings in Vermont, the history of town meetings, and assemblies and neighborhood planning assemblies. So the grounding of municipalism is participatory assembly-style democracy. It's decentralized, it's local, it's small, and as Debbie said in her speech, there will always be power. The question is, where will the power reside? And the idea of municipalism is to return politics to the original vision of decentralized government in assemblies, returning power to the citizens, and asking the question, what does it mean to be a human being? And through municipalism, ideally, we will become real human beings, new human beings, not just consumers. We will be creative and we will be joyful.
Well, I have some questions about that. And I'm sure other people do too. And you can call in, if you could just remind me of the number or put it on the screen. You can call in and ask questions also during this half an hour. And I hope you do. First of all, I want to know, you said, backing up, you said that Barcelona and Comú took over the city. How did they take over the city?
Yeah. Well, I think before, what they were calling 15M, which we figured out over the course of the weekend meant 2015 in May, they had a sort of a revolution that was following on a number of years of activism around eviction. There were massive evictions in Barcelona, massive, many a day. And so they created this group that helped people help themselves to fight the eviction process. And then the next thing they did, which we found out there, was that they created a code of ethics with members of politics, with members of the populace, a code of ethics for politics, because they realized that people were really disenfranchised about and really, didn't believe in the system. So they created this code of ethics, and out of that came this electoral campaign. And
that was through a meeting with thousands and thousands of residents of the city. I forget the number, but
yeah.
it was shocking how many people were involved to have this conversation.
So it was electoral politics, but it was a different kind of electoral politics.
Indeed. And so they had this election, which was based on a number of years of showing people that they actually, cared about their welfare and that they were willing to work for it and that they were trying to do politics in a new way. And they miraculously won for mayor, Ada Colau, who was not only the first woman mayor of Barcelona, but the first working class mayor of Barcelona. She became the mayor, and they won 11 seats on the city council out of, I think, 44. And then they proceeded to have a 6-month emergency program where they would sort of clean up the ethics of the city and look at what the priorities of the citizens were through assemblies and find out what people really wanted and put those things in place.
And so here's another question I have for you both. Who was at this conference? Who was presenting at the conference? Who came to the conference besides you two?
Yeah, a long list. I mean, this was global.
5 continents.
Yeah.
600 or 700 people. People from Poland, Russia, Hong Kong, Italy, the United States.
All over, yeah. It was fascinating to see. They had a giant screen with a map that had locations around the world where these municipalist platforms are underway, either running candidates or currently in government. They had different colors to show. And it is global, and that was, and representatives from around the world came to this conference, and some were on panels and at the, well, we're early on the show here, but the final presentation at the very end of the conference, representatives came from different countries and had maybe 5 or 10 minutes to talk about what's going on, and it was so amazing.
Including, I would say, probably the most thrilling visitors to the conference were people from Rojava, Syria,
Yeah.
where they have created a democratic, autonomous government in the vacuum of power, in the middle of a war zone.
Oh. And
based on Murray Bookchin's municipalist
Really?
theories, remarkably enough. Yeah, the leader of the movement was in prison, and he started reading Murray Bookchin, and he changed the lives of many people.
so we've got this global movement, municipalist movement, that's happening all over the place in all these different cities, including in Syria. And at the same time, we have Donald Trump, President of the United States. We have Vladimir Putin. We have any number of regressive authoritarian leaders all over the world. How do these two things go together? How does the picture of sort of marching dictatorship and authoritarianism go along with this bubbling of municipalism, democracy? How do you put those together?
I think, do you want to,
Go ahead if you
Isn't
can.
that an important
yeah,
question?
no, it is.
Absolutely.
I think that one of the last lectures or discussions at the conference, which I actually didn't go to, was called something like Between Neoliberalism and the Radical Right. And I think there was an abiding theme throughout the conference, which was that neoliberalism is just as dangerous as the radical right, and it's a benign dangerousness that has spread a treacherous process of the financialization of life and the displacement of peoples. But there were some people who were coming to municipalism out of a sense that in this new age of totalitarianism, the only thing we can do is work locally. But I think other people were already there and were already working in that mode. And I mean, I think the fearless cities concept, the first night there was a lot of talk about sanctuary cities and things like that. And so there was a veneer of this sort of response to Trump and response to Putin. But the municipalist movement is deeper than that. And I think it's going to abide. It's been going on for a long time, and this is a moment when people are suddenly realizing that it's a practical, reasonable way to try to approach our global problems. And it would be just as important whether or not these dangerous individuals were in power.
So why did
we have a call, Genese? We have a call on line 2.
Goodness.
Can we interrupt?
Sure.
So I think I just hit this button here. You're on. Hello.
Hi. How are you? This is Ali, and I'm calling from Burlington. And I have to say that I have great admiration for both of the guests. And I have to say, I want to say just about Murray Bookchin that I used to live in New York City a long time ago, around 17 years ago, and reading his literature, I decided to come to his institute in Plainfield, and that's how I was introduced to Vermont, and I moved to Vermont, ended up following up, and I think the activism and all the hard work that the grassroots work that's been done in Vermont is amazing, and as a second-generation Iranian immigrant, I think he was the person who introduced me to what it means to have a green democracy or a form of egalitarianism where, ethnic tension and all these things that we're struggling with can be resolved. So I have to say I have great admiration for both of your guests and the wonderful work they've been doing and just keeping engaged with the politics and municipal politics in the city of Burlington. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your call.
Thanks, Ali.
Thank you.
So,
Absolutely.
following up on that, just speaking of you two, why did you each want to go to this conference? Besides Barcelona.
Well, there's been a lot of, I've involved myself locally with trying to have a say in what's been proposed for projects in the city that are proposed to be a benefit to the city, and sounded very exciting, like the Plan B TV, which invited people to be involved in the process. And I found myself having difficulty being heard. And I guess to fast forward is I found myself wanting to help with the Neighborhood Power campaign in the last recent elections, and made some of these campaign books that you might have seen around the Old North End.
Certainly did.
And so I was very involved with that, and along with a large group of people, came very close to winning this election from a pretty solid with incumbent.
Wards 2 and 3
Wards
in
2 and
Burlington.
3.
Yep.
And so a lot of work went into it, and a lot of volunteer time and effort, and this conference came onto my this is my technique here for fixing that.
Nice.
It was a way to have like a working vacation, and to remain to know that other people around our planet, we're on one part of it, but we talked about this in the campaign, that we have local issues that are, as I was seeing, a lot of people are seeing, it has to do with major income inequalities, power in the hands of the few that have money, and that are designing our future without the public's input. And so to know that there's other people in their own way and place trying to find a way for the people to reclaim our right to our cities and to our public spaces. So this is going on around the world.
Yeah.
So when we heard about this conference, it's like, wow, this is great. Okay, we're done with this campaign, but let's go meet some people and find out what they're doing and what's going on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're done with the campaign to elect me for city council, but we're by no means done with our campaign to increase the neighborhood power. And we were really inspired during the campaign by the people in Barcelona. They're our heroes. I mean, Ada Colau was our hero, and the people in Syria were our heroes. And we were, we knew that it was going on. We were trying to make people understand that there was something going on around the world that is different. It really is different, and it's a practical means of actually creating participatory democracy. But I had no idea how different it would be to really be there and to be in the midst of that and to see that the problems that we're facing in little liberal Vermont are being faced all over the world, and they're the same problems: privatization of public space, hijacking of democratic decision-making processes by money, displacement and economic inequality, corruption, conflicts of interest, lack of transparency, ecological and social values being sold off for immediate private gain. All these things that here maybe don't look that dangerous, but when you look at them in a global context and hear people all over the world talking about their water being sold off to private interests, in Jackson, Mississippi, hearing about plans to flood entire neighborhoods to create gambling casinos, you realize what is going on. And that there is, at this point, as far as I know, as far as I can see, only one answer to that, and that is the municipalist local control of decision making. It was just astonishing. Worth the trip.
So did you?
Yeah.
Did you? I want to hear more about the conference itself and the stuff that came out of that, but I want to jump so we don't run out of time before I ask you this question, but did it give you insights into how we should approach the campaigns, the challenges that we're engaged in here?
I think so.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Practical things. I mean, the first workshop that I went to was on commons, which are commonly owned public spaces, water, buildings, parks, things like that. This is an issue that is of the moment in Burlington. We have the Moran plant, we have the Memorial Auditorium, we have City Hall Park. We have a choice whether we're going to think of those as actual public spaces that we have decision-making capacity to decide upon, or continue with this private-public partnership. What I was astonished to find is that cities across the world, from Seoul to Naples to Barcelona to Grenoble to Paris, are actually implementing laws, regulations, and limits
Yeah.
to enable real public participation, real public ownership of these places. And here in Burlington, Vermont, we're still stuck in this old private-public partnership trap. So the whole code of ethics thing was astonishing, and we went to a workshop, and we're going to get a spreadsheet about that, about actually laying out ethical codes for the professionalization of politicians to stop this, namby-pamby backroom hand greasing business that goes on even here.
Other insights? Those are good ones.
Yeah.
Or just inspiration, even.
Well, yeah, inspiration. The chatter in between during the breaks was phenomenal. I mean, there was 3 courtyards. It was a pretty big Universitat Barcelona, as it's already began to describe. There was 3 large courtyards, and we had some breakout groups from some of the workshops, and so people were in different corners of this. There's usually I think each one of them had a pond in the middle, and they had beautiful arcade around the courtyard. So in the shadows, we would sit in groups of up to like 40 people, 30, it varied. But anyway, a very active dialogue and very excited conversations and mini presentations from people that came that were doing a lot in their own place in the world, but weren't on the panel, say, as a presenter. But then had a chance in our breakout groups to talk about where they're from, what they're working on, such as in Zagreb, there's a building that used to be like the largest defense building or something. It's, I forget how many tens of thousands of square feet, and now there's something like 100 local organizations that are creating the how to use the building and have an arrangement with the city managing officials on building maintenance and keeping the building running. So they're defining the use of that public space that was once a giant military building. But I guess what I wanted to say is it was amazing being in these courtyards and just listening to the sound of this constant conversation. It wasn't this low murmur that you might hear in a mall or something, but it was like this laughters and smiles and people just like, and these people are just meeting too and talking about where they're from, just like constant sound and conversation. It's very, each break was like that. So it's very, very exciting.
And as a linguist, I have to know what language were you all speaking in? I mean, were you all in, was there a common language that people were using?
There were different workshops. Some of the workshops were in Spanish, some of them were in English, and in the English ones, there were people who obviously English was not their first language, and so they were speaking in their best English that they could, and sometimes there were translators, and but people from all over the world. And it's Catalonia, so there's Catalan and there's Spanish, but it was beautiful. And people are hopeful. I guess that's M15 or 15M, 2015 May, was a major shock to the people in Barcelona, and there are groups all over who are also taking up that torch and continuing on. And it's rare that we see hope nowadays.
And before you left, I had a question about the reaction. Say, even in Barcelona, the reaction to Barcelona and Camus and how that has come about. Did you find out any more about that? Are they under attack in a lot of ways, as well as triumphant? Maybe that wasn't talked about.
No. I mean, there was some discussion of the challenges that they still face in, getting people to trust them and getting people to see their way. They don't have, there are 11 council people out of 44 and the mayor.
Yeah, it's only 2 years in or a little less. 2 years, yes, May 2015. So they were talking about, having a some mid-range goals and long-range goals. Like, it is going to take time for this movement to grow and for people to understand what it's about and that they can be involved. This is about public involvement for real. And that this, as I understand you described, people were brought on early on in the process of like, what do we want to change things? Let's make a mandate, and they do it for the different districts too, from what I understand in the city. They lay out a plan that they're, with benchmarks and goals that are established not by just a few people, but by the people en masse. They had thousands and thousands of people that set this up, this mandate and these goals. So, but I also want to look at Cooperation Jackson here in Jackson, Mississippi. They have now a municipalist platform in government, and an amazing Kali speaker. I'm trying to remember his last name.
I don't know his last name.
So there's so much going on down there that, so meeting these people now, we can learn about what's going on and look into it further. Looking forward to seeing some of the videos come back from the panels, because they were taped, but I think they're a little bit, some of the ones in Spanish are up, and I think the panel that Debbie was on is also on YouTube. So if you Google Fearless Cities on YouTube, you'll find some videos. We were lucky. We had a transcribed translator. There's a translator, so you can get an ear headset and listen to.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, very, very helpful.
Yeah, but we met with there was a breakout session of U.S. Municipalists to talk about, next steps around here. And I think, one of the problems that kept coming up was the tension between, people who actually want to change the way we do politics in terms of process, in terms of making it really participatory, and other people who are still kind of stuck in what I would say, simulacrum of progressive values, who think that, if we just say we want this, that, or the other, but we're doing it in the similar top-down way, that's enough. And, there were people who, called themselves Bernie Democrats or, progressives from New York and different places who weren't really walking the walk of municipalism in terms of really bringing the decision-making to the people. And so that's a tension that still needs to be dealt with. And another thing, I talked to some of the people on Camus, and they were saying, well, in America, you have this great tradition of participatory democracy, which we don't really have here. And particularly in Vermont, we have that. So we, in a certain way, are ahead of the curve. But in Vermont, we already have, town meetings, and we already, but we have to use them.
So, on that note, we're going to close with anything else you want to say about this conference, or where it's leading you from here? So this is Ibnar, Avilix, Stratibus, and Genese Grill finishing our talk about their visit to Barcelona for the Fearless Cities Conference. And I think probably rather than summing up, let's just one memory of your time in Barcelona that you want to bring up.
Well,
talking about snails, you could talk about.
Could I sum up?
Yeah.
I want to just sum up, because I want to say that there are things happening right here that can really benefit from this global vision, and the most immediate one is Memorial Auditorium, our common space, and there is a movement afoot to have an all-NPA forum about our future, the future of Memorial Auditorium, and I think that we gain strength by realizing that people all over the world are taking back their public spaces, and we don't have to just give them up to some fatalistic idea of, public-private partnership. We can do better.
That's great. Live at 5:25, this is Save Open Space. Thank you very much for coming.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you. Sorry you didn't get to talk about the snails.